Hi guys. So we are reading from the Forgotten Books of Eden today. We are in the letter of Aristeas. There are 11 chapters and they all seem kind of long, so we'll see how far we get today. Okay, the letter of Aristeas. In the letter of Aristeas, one of the most noteworthy and ancient recoveries in this collection, we have come a long way from Adam and Eve, a long way from the flood. This writing presents a spectacle of the resiliency of the human race, which has repeopled the earth, with powerful nations living in pomp and splendor. You will read here of the first great bibliophile, Ptolemy Philadelphus. He desires to collect into his library at Alexandria all the books in the world. Finally, in his passion to secure one great work, the Jewish laws, he trades 100,000 captives for that book. This is probably the highest price ever paid for a single work. It presents an unusual reason for the end of the great captivity. The events of this narrative took place during the lifetime of this Queen Arsinoe, who died 270 BC. The exact date of the writing is uncertain. The details of court life, the discussion of social problems of the day are of the utmost interest and vividness. It is an odd discovery in this day and age to see the king and his guests playing at questions and answers during their banqueting. The structure of this absorbing work is as follows. Dedication of the book to Philocrates. Preliminary action, the proposal of the librarian to liberate the Jewish captives in exchange for a book, the emancipation. The letter of Philadelphus to Eleazar. The reply. The names of the committee appointed to translate the book. Description of the royal presence. The table, probably the most elaborate piece of furniture ever produced. Okay. The other presents, description of Jerusalem, the temple and the waterworks system, the ceremony, the citadel, the city, the countryside. Eleazar's farewell, Eleazar's explanation of the law. This is profound wisdom. The reception, the banquet, 72 questions and answers, the translation of the book. Chapter 1. At the time of the Jewish captivity in Egypt, Ptolemy Philadelphus reveals himself as the first great bibliophile. He desires to have all the books in the world in his library. In order to get the laws of Moses, he offers to trade 100,000 captives for that work, exclaiming, "It is a small boon indeed. Since I have collected material for a memorable history of my visit to Eleazar, the high priest of the Jews, and because you, Philocrates, as you lose no opportunity of reminding me, have set great store upon receiving an account of the motives and object of my mission. I have attempted to draw up clear exposition of the matter for you, for I perceive that you possess a natural love of learning, a quality which is the highest possession of man, to be constantly attempting to add to his stock of knowledge and acquirements, whether through the study of history or by actually participating in the events themselves. It is by this means, by taking up into itself the noblest elements, that the soul is established in purity. And having fixed its aim on piety, the noblest goal of all, it uses this as its infallible guide, and so acquires a definite purpose. It was my devotion to the pursuit of religious knowledge that led me to undertake the embassy to the man I have mentioned, who was held in the highest esteem by his own citizens and by others, both of his virtue and his majesty, and who had in his possession documents of the highest value to the Jews in his own country and in foreign lands for the interpretation of the divine law. For their laws are written on leather parchments in Jewish characters. This embassy then I undertook with enthusiasm, having first of all found an opportunity of pleading with the king on behalf of the Jewish captives who had been transported from Judea to Egypt by the king's father, when he first obtained possession of the city and conquered the land of Egypt. It is worthwhile that I should tell you this story too, since I am convinced that you, with your disposition towards holiness and your sympathy with men who are living in accordance with the holy law, will all the more readily listen to the account which I propose to set forth, since you yourself have lately come to us from the island and are more anxious to hear everything that tends to build up the soul. On a former occasion, too, I sent you a record of the facts which I thought worth relating about the Jewish race, the record which I had obtained from the most learned high priest of the most learned land of Egypt. Are you so eager, as you are so eager to acquire the knowledge of those things which can benefit the mind, I feel it incumbent upon me to impart to you all the information in my power. I should feel the same duty towards all who possessed the same disposition, but I feel it especially towards you, since you have aspirations which are so noble, and since you are not only my brother in character, no less than in blood, but are one with me as well in the pursuit of goodness. For neither the pleasure derived from gold, nor any other of the possessions which are prized by shallow minds, confers the same benefit as the pursuit of culture and the study which we expend in securing it. But that I may not weary you by a too lengthy introduction, I will proceed at once to the substance of my narrative. Demetrius of Phalerum, the president of the king's library, received a vast sum of money for the purpose of collecting together, as far as he possibly could, all the books in the world. By means of purchase and transcription, he carried out, to the best of his ability, the purpose of the king. On one occasion, when I was present, he was asked, "How many thousand books are there in the library?" And he replied, "More than 200,000, O king, and I shall make endeavor in the immediate future to gather together the remainder also, so that the total of 500,000 may be reached. I am told that the laws of the Jews are worth transcribing and deserve a place in your library. What is it to prevent you from doing this?" replied the king. "Everything that is necessary has been placed at your disposal." "They need to be translated," answered Demetrius, "for in the country of the Jews they use a peculiar alphabet, just as the Egyptians too have a special form of letters and speak a peculiar dialect. They are supposed to use the Syriac tongue, but this is not the case. Their language is quite different." And the king, when he understood all the facts of the case, ordered a letter to be written to the Jewish high priest that his purpose, which has already been described, might be accomplished. Thinking that the time had come to press the demand which I had often laid before Sasabius of Tarentum and Andreas, the chief of the bodyguard, for the emancipation of the Jews who had been transported from Judea by the king's father, for when by a combination of good fortune and courage he had brought his attack on the whole district of Kol, Syria, and Phoenicia to a successful issue. In the process of terrorizing the country into subjection, he transported some of his foes and others he reduced to captivity. The number of those whom he transported from the country of the Jews to Egypt amounted to no less than 100,000. Of these, he armed 30,000 picked men and settled them in garrisons in the country districts. And even before this time, large numbers of Jews had come into Egypt with the Persian and in an earlier period, still others had been sent to Egypt to help Psammaticus in his campaign against the king of the Ethiopians. But these were nothing like so numerous as the captives whom Ptolemy, the son of Lagus, transported. As I have already said, Ptolemy picked out the best of these, the men who were in the prime of life, and distinguished for their courage and armed them. But the great mass of the others, those who were too old or too young for this purpose, and the women too, he reduced to slavery. Not that he wished to do this of his own free will, but he was compelled by his soldiers, who claimed them as a reward for the services which they had rendered in war. Having, as has already been stated, obtained an opportunity for securing their emancipation, I addressed the king with the following arguments. Let us not be so unreasonable as to allow our deeds to give the lie to our words, since the law which we wish not only to transcribe but also to translate belongs to the whole Jewish race. What justification shall we be able to find for our embassy while such vast numbers of them remain in a state of slavery in your kingdom? In the perfection and wealth of your clemency, release those who are held in such miserable bondage. Since, as I have been at pains to discover, the God who gave them their law is the God who maintains your kingdom. They worship the same God, the Lord and Creator of the universe, as all other men, as we ourselves, O King, though we call him by different names, such as Zeus or Dis. This name was very appropriately bestowed upon him by our first ancestors, in order to signify that he, through whom all things are endowed with life and come into being, is necessarily the rider and the Lord of the universe. Set all mankind an example of magnanimity by releasing those who are held in bondage. After a brief interval, while I was offering up an earnest prayer to God that he would so dispose the mind of the king that all the captives might be set at liberty, for the human race, being the creation of God, is swayed and influenced by him. Therefore, with many divers prayers, I called upon him who ruleth the heart, that the king might be constrained to grant my request. For I had great hopes with regard to the salvation of the men, since I was assured that God would grant a fulfillment of my prayer. For when men from pure motives plan some action in their interest of righteousness and the performance of noble deeds, Almighty God brings their efforts and purposes to a successful issue. The king raised his head and, looking up at me with a cheerful countenance, asked, How many thousands do you think they will number? Andreas, who was standing near, replied, A little more than 100,000. It is a small boon, indeed, said the king, that Aristeas asks of us. Then Sasabius and some others who were present said, Yes, but it will be a fit tribute to your magnanimity for you to offer the enfranchisement of these men as an act of devotion to the supreme God. You have been greatly honored by Almighty God and exalted above all your forefathers in glory, and it is only fitting that you should render to him the greatest thank offering in your power. Extremely pleased with these arguments, he gave orders that in addition should be made to the wages of the soldiers by the amount of the redemption money, that 20 drachmae should be paid to the owners for every slave, that a public order should be issued, and that registers of the captives should be attached to it. He showed the greatest enthusiasm in the business, for it was God who had brought our purpose to fulfillment in its entirety, and constrained him to redeem not only those who had come into Egypt with the army of his father, but any who had come before that time or had been subsequently brought into the kingdom. It was pointed out to him that the ransom money would exceed 400 talents. I think it will be useful to insert a copy of the decree, for in this way The magnanimity of the king who was empowered by God to save such vast multitudes will be made clearer and more manifest. The decree of the king ran as follows: all who served in the army of our father in the campaign against Syria and Phoenicia and in the attack upon the country of the Jews, and became possessed of Jewish captives and brought them back to the city of Alexandria in the land of Egypt, or sold them to others, and in the same way any captives who were in our land before that time or were brought hither afterwards, all who possess such captives are required to set them at liberty at once, receiving 20 drachmae per head as ransom money. The soldiers will receive this money as a gift added to their wages, the others from the king's treasury. We think that it was against our father's will and against all propriety that they should have been made captives, and that the devastation of their land and the transportation of the Jews of Egypt was an act of military wantonness. The spoil which fell to the soldiers on the field of battle was all the booty which they should have claimed. To reduce the people to slavery, in addition, was an act of absolute injustice. Wherefore, since it is acknowledged that we are accustomed to render justice to all men, and especially to those who are unfairly in a condition of servitude, and since we strive to deal fairly with all men according to the demands of justice and piety, we have decreed, in reference to the persons of the Jews who are in any condition of bondage and in any part of our dominion, that those who possess them shall receive the stipulated sum of money and set them at liberty, and no man shall show any tardiness in discharging his obligations. Within the 3 days after the publication of this decree, they must make lists of slaves for the officers appointed to carry out our will, and immediately produce the persons of the captives. For we consider that it will be advantageous to us and to our affairs that the matter should be brought to a conclusion. Anyone who likes may give information about who disobey the decree, on condition that if the man is proved guilty, he will become his slave. His property, however, will be handed over to the royal treasury. When the decree was brought to be read over to the king for his approval, it contained all the other provisions except the phrase any captives who were in the land before that time or were brought hither afterwards. And in his magnanimity and the largeness of his heart, the king inserted this clause and gave orders that the grant of money required for the redemption should be deposited in full with the paymasters of the forces and the royal bankers. And so the matter was decided and the decree ratified within 7 days. The grant for the redemption amounted to more than 660 talents, for many infants at the breast were emancipated together with their mothers. When the question was raised whether the sum of 20 talents was to be paid for these, the king ordered that it should be done, and thus he carried out his decision in the most comprehensive way. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Showing how the most careful records were kept of affairs of state, government red tape, a committee of 6 is appointed to go to the high priest in Jerusalem and arrange for the exchange. Aristeas is put in charge of the delegation. When this had been done, he ordered Demetrius to draw up a memorial with regard to the transcription of the Jewish books. For all affairs of state used to be carried out by means of decrees and with the most painstaking accuracy by these Egyptian kings, and nothing was done in a slipshod or haphazard fashion. And so I have inserted copies of the memorial and the letters. The number of the presents sent and the nature of each, since every one of them excelled in magnificent sense and technical skill. The following is a copy of the memorial, the memory of Demetrius, To the great king. Since you have given me instructions, O king, that the books which are needed to complete your library should be collected together, and that those which are defective should be repaired, I have devoted myself with the utmost care to the fulfillment of your wishes, and I now have the following proposal to lay before you. The books of the law of the Jews, with some few others, are absent from the library. They are written in the Hebrew characters and language and have been carelessly interpreted, and do not represent the original text as I am informed by those who know, for they have never had a king's care to protect them. It is necessary that these should be made accurate for your library, since the law which they contain, in as much as it is of divine origin, is full of wisdom and free from all blemish. For this reason, literary men and poets and the mass of historical writers have held aloof from referring to these books and the men who have lived and are living in accordance with them, because their conception of life is so sacred and religious, as Hecataeus of Abdera says. If it pleases you, O king, a letter shall be written to the high priest in Jerusalem, asking him to send 6 elders out of every tribe, men who have lived the noblest life and are most skilled in their law, that we may find out the points in which the majority of them are in agreement, and so having obtained an accurate translation, may place it in a conspicuous place in a manner worthy of the work itself and your purpose. May continual prosperity be yours. When this memorial had been presented, the king ordered a letter to be written to Eleazar on the matter, giving also an account of the emancipation of the Jewish captives. And he gave 50 talents weight of gold, and 70 talents of silver, and a large quantity of precious stones to make bowls and vials, and a table and libation cups. He also gave orders to those who had the custody of his coffers to allow the artificers to make a selection of any materials they might require for the purpose, and that 100 talents in money should be sent to provide sacrifices for the temple and for other needs. I shall give you a full account of the workmanship after I have set before you copies of the letters. The letter of the king ran as follows. King Ptolemy sends greeting and salutation to the high priest Eleazar, since there are many Jews settled in our realm who were carried off from Jerusalem by the Persians at the time of their power, and many more who came with my father into Egypt as captives. Large numbers of these he placed in the army and paid them higher wages than usual. And when he had proved the loyalty of their leaders, he built fortresses and placed them in their charge, that the native Egyptians might be intimidated by them. And I, when I ascended the throne, adopted a kindly attitude towards all my subjects, and more particularly to those who were citizens of yours. I have set at liberty more than 100,000 captives, paying their owners the appropriate market price for them. And if ever evil has been done to your people through the passions of the mob, I have made reparation. I've made them reparation. The motive which prompted my action has been the desire to act piously and render unto the supreme God a thank offering for maintaining my kingdom in peace and great glory in all the world. Moreover, those of your people who were in the prime of life I have drafted into my army, and those who were fit to be attached to my person and worthy of the confidence of the court I have established in official positions. Now, since I am anxious to show my gratitude to these men and to the Jews throughout the world and to the generations yet to come, I have determined that your law shall be translated from the Hebrew tongue, which is in use amongst you, into the Greek language, that these books may be added to the other royal books in my library. It will be a kindness on your part and a reward for my zeal if you will select 6 elders from each of your tribes, men of noble life and skilled in your law and able to interpret it, that in questions of dispute we may be able to discover the verdict in which the majority agree. For the investigation is of the highest possible importance. I hope to win great renown by the accomplishment of this work. I have sent Andreas, the chief of my bodyguard, and Aristeas, men whom I hold in high esteem, to lay the matter before you and present you with 100 talents of silver, the first fruits of my offering for the temple and the sacrifices and other religious rites. If you will write to me concerning your wishes in these matters, you will confer a great favor upon me and afford me a new pledge of friendship, for all your wishes shall be carried out as speedily as possible. Farewell. To this letter, Eleazar replied appropriately as follows. Eleazar, the high priest, sends greetings to King Ptolemy, his true friend. My highest wishes are for your welfare and the welfare of Queen Aristeas, your sister, and your children. I also am well. I have received your letter and am greatly rejoiced by your purpose in your noble counsel. I summoned together the whole people and read it to them, that they might know your devotion to our God. I showed them too the cups which you sent, 20 of gold and 30 of silver, the 5 bowls, and the table dedication, and the 100 talents of silver for the offering of the sacrifices and providing the things of which the temple stands in need. These gifts were brought to me by Andreas, one of your most honored servants, and by Aristeas, both good men and true, distinguished by their learning, and worthy in every way to be the representatives of your high principles in righteous purposes. These men imparted to me your message and received from me an answer in agreement with your letter. I will consent to everything which is advantageous to you, even though your request is very unusual. For you have bestowed upon our citizens great and never to be forgotten benefits in many ways. Immediately, therefore, I offer sacrifices on behalf of you, your sister, your children, and your friends, and all the people prayed that your plans might prosper continually, and that Almighty God might preserve your kingdom in peace with honor, and the translation of the holy law might prove advantageous to you and be carried out successfully. In the presence of all the people, I selected 6 elders from each tribe, good men and true, and I have sent them to you with a copy of our law. It will be a kindness, O righteous king, if you will give instruction that as soon as the translation of the law is completed, the men shall be restored again to us in safety. Farewell. The following are the names of the elders of the first tribe: Joseph, Ezekiah, Zechariah, John, Ezekiah. There's 2 Ezekiahs. Elisha. Of the second tribe: Judas, Simon, Samuel, Adias, Matthias, Eshlemius. Of the third tribe: Nehemiah, Joseph, Theodosius, Basius, Ornius, Decus. Of the fourth tribe: Jonathan, Arbias, Elisha, Ananias, Chabrias. Of the fifth tribe: Isaac, Jacob, Jesus, Sabbatius, Simon, Levi. Of the sixth tribe: Judas, Joseph, Simon, Zechariah, Samuel, Salmias. Of the seventh tribe: Zebatius, Zedekiah, Jacob, Isaac, Josias, Netithis. Of the eighth tribe: Theodosius, Jason, Jesus, Theodatus, John, Jonathan. Of the ninth tribe: Theophilus, Abraham, Irsamos, Jason, Endemius, Daniel. Of the 10th tribe: Jeremiah, Eleazar, Zechariah, Benias, Elisha, Dethius. Of the 11th tribe: Samuel, Joseph, Judas, Jonathes, Chabu, Dosithius. Of the 12th tribe: Isalias, John, Theodosius, Samos, Abiates, Zico. They were 72 in all. Such was the answer which Eleazar and his friends gave to the king's letter. Okay, guys, we're already at 30 minutes, so I'm going to end it here. So we're just going to do the intro, chapter 1 and chapter 2 today. Thanks for watching and listening. Bye.